Okay, so everyone is moving to Spring Boot, right? So why Spring Boot? Why everyone is so crazy about Spring Boot? Isn't that a valid question? I think so. Basically, there are two types of people who are gonna be having this question in their mind. The first type of people who are very new to Java and they're freshers, they are coming to Java, they're learning Java and they're saying, okay, there are so many frameworks there in the market, but why I'm learning Spring? Why everyone is forcing me to learn Spring Boot to get a job? This is the first category of people. The second category of people who are having years of experience and working in legacy project. And now they have the project demand to migrate their project to Spring Boot, but they know Spring and they know how it works, but they're migrating to Spring Boot. Their project migration is happening. And also when they're trying to change their job, it's all about Spring and Spring Boot and microservices. So people are like, okay, I know Spring, but yeah, people are demanding Spring Boot. So why should I learn Spring Boot? Because I know Spring. So in this video, I'll just try to answer you a very simple question, that why Spring Boot? So we're gonna be creating a hello world application in this particular video, but in an unique way. First, we're going to be creating the hello world application with raw Spring framework. So this is going to be a very simple RESTful application, a hello world RESTful application. We're going to be building it with the raw Spring framework first, and then we're going to be jumping ahead to Spring Boot, and we're going to be creating the same application with the same requirement with Spring Boot. And we're going to be comparing this couple of applications, and we're going to be finding it out why everyone is forcing us to learn Spring Boot and why we should so interest as a developer to learn Spring Boot, because it's going to make our life easy. But how? That's what we're going to be finding it out in this particular video. Hi, my name is Vilas and you are watching Selenium Express. Without wasting any time, let's roll the intro. Okay, so now let's jump to the development part and let's just create a hello world application. As I said, you guys, this is going to be a RESTful application, and in this application, you're going to be building an endpoint called myapp.com/hello world. And this is going to return you a hello world string. And that's a very simple requirement. Okay, so I have a very simple task for my client. So I have to create an endpoint which basically returns a string called hello world. So that's a simple requirement that I have right now. So I already know Spring for years, but still, let's see how much time I spent to create this application and deliver this application to my client. Okay, so the first thing that I'll be doing, I'll be creating a project right now. So let's just go ahead and create a Maven project because I know Maven how it works. So let's just go ahead and use Maven as a build tool, and let's just create a simple Maven project. I'll choose this as internal, and I'll just choose the Maven archetype web app because I'll be creating a web app and web application, a hello world application. So the group ID I'll be choosing is com.selenium express. That's my organization, and I want to create a hello world app. Okay, the artifact is going to be my project name, and this is going to be hello world Spring app. Okay, and I'll click on finish. So I'm creating a Maven project manually because I will be creating my project, then only I can start writing code inside it. So let me give some time to my IDE to generate the Maven project. And now it is asking for the confirmation. I'll just put a Y over here and click on enter. It just says that the build is success, and I got a project over here and I can write my code inside it. Okay, so let's just go ahead and open this application and let's see that why I'm getting some issue. So the first thing that I can see over here, this application is using the Java version 1.5. Obviously that's pretty old and we have to change it. The next issue that I am seeing over here, I have an issue inside the pom.xml, and there is a cross mark here. And let me hover on this, and it says some issues over here on the top. We'll be fixing this issue as well. And another issue I'm seeing over here inside the src main web app, I have an index.jsp page, and this is a page that Maven has generated for me. and there is some JSP compilation issue. This is a JSP page and there is a compilation issue over here, and it's saying me some error that I have to fix. So 3 major things that I have to fix right now. The first issue that I'll be fixing here is that there is a cross mark inside this SRC because there is a JSP page and there is some compilation issue. So I'll go ahead and straight away delete this JSP page because I don't want to create a view over here. I want to create a REST API or a REST endpoint called hello world, which is going to return the hello world string to the client. Okay, so I have deleted that particular JSP page because I don't want to create any view for my application. I don't want to create any screen for my application. The next one is the pom.xml issue. Let's just go inside and let's just see like how we can fix it. So this particular issue says exception java.lang.exceptional initializer error cannot access the default field of properties in thread worker 18 building. I'll be telling you why we're getting this issue. So basically this is an issue belongs to Maven only. So the version of Maven that I'm using is a bit older. So right now I'll be updating my Maven compiler, which is going to help me to compile my source file that I'll be writing inside my application like the Java file. I will be needing a updated Maven compiler. So I'll be updating my Maven compiler to get rid of this particular issue. So I'll go over here to this build and I'll be adding a couple of plugins. Maybe if you're practicing this particular lesson, you might not get this particular issue, but I am getting it. So let me just add a couple of plugins here. So I'll be writing here plugin, over here plugins, and let me add a couple of plugin over here and let me update the version of the Maven plugin. All right, so inside this plugins and plugins, I have 2 plugin here. And what this plugin basically does, this is the Word plugin. So this is the Maven Word plugin and this is the Maven compiler plugin. Both of this plugin version I have updated. So you don't have to do it if you're practicing it, but in case anytime if you're getting that particular error in your Spring Boot application or in your Spring Framework application, you can try updating the Maven compiler plugin and the Maven Word plugin, which will basically help us to generate a Word file and to compile my source file. I'm just updating the versions over here. All right. So now I think if I do a Control S, this issue will go away and everything looks fine. And this default Java version also, let me change. So I'm going to use the latest Java version here for my project. So I'll go to my project over here and I'll be using something called properties. And I will be adding the properties, a couple of properties over here to change the Java version. So I'll go to Wave and I'll search for Maven Java 8 compiler. All right, so I'll be going to the first link. I'll copy this Maven compiler source and target, Control C, and I'll be coming back to my STS, paste it over here. And here, instead of Java 8, I'll be using Java 19 because that's the latest version of Java that I have over here. But I think already Java 21 is out. If you want to try that, you can use that particular source and target over here. I'll just do a Control S and I'll click over here and do a Maven update. So Maven update project, and I'll see that this particular version is changing or not. I'll do a force update, do an OK. And you can see that right now my Java version that I'm using is pointing to the Java 19. So at least after some effort, I'm able to solve the kind of problem that I'm having in my project right now. And at least I can start writing some code right now. Okay, so the project setup is almost done for my Hello World application. Okay, so right now, the next thing, let me just clear out this console. And the next thing here is that I want to write a Java file, and there I'll be developing an endpoint, and that endpoint job is going to be returning a hello world string to my client. And to do that, I will be going to the source main Java folder, but looks like there is a Maven issue again. So I don't have any source main Java source folder over here. The resources folder is something where I can keep my resources file like images, HTML file, some properties file, but I don't want to do that. I want to write some of the Java code, and for that I need to create a Java folder. So I think that there is some issue with the Maven. And what I'll do right now, I'll go to the application that I'm creating. I'll go to the source, main, and here web app and the sources are there. I'll create a new folder called Java, and here I'll be keeping my Java files. I'll be going back to STS, and right now I'll just do a refresh to get the folder that I have created. Perfect, I got the Java folder, and now I'll be creating a new class, and here I'll be writing my endpoint. Okay, so I'll be creating a controller here called hello world controller. Okay, and I'll be keeping it inside a project called com.seleniumexpress.hello-world-app. Okay, I'll just do a finish, and here I want to create a method, a simple method called public string show hello world string, and I want to return a string that I want to return it back to the client. Okay, so I will be returning a string called hello world. Welcome to my first Spring app. So I have a method over here, and this is the string which will be returned to my client whenever he is hitting an endpoint called /hello. Let's say /hello or /hello world. Let me just say /hello world. So this is the endpoint I want to create. But how can I create an endpoint? So I don't want to write code for that, and I want to use Spring Framework to create this endpoint. So Spring will help me to create this endpoint. So Spring has an annotation here. The annotation name is get mapping. So I'll be using get mapping here, and inside this braces, I'll cut this string, Control X, and I'll be wrapping it off with a double quote, and we'll be pasting it over here. Okay, but I have an error over here. Do a control space. I'm not getting any suggestion because I want to use Spring, but Spring is not present inside my application class path or inside my application build. So I have to add this dependency, the Spring dependency, inside my application called Hello World Spring app in order to use that particular in order to use this particular annotation. Okay, and also one more Spring annotation that I want to use is that I want to make this a controller. Okay, so I can make this a controller. I can use a get mapping annotation, and I want to return this particular string to the client, and I want to return this string to the client browser. So whenever the client is going to have a request to me called /hello world, I want to return this string back, and I want to write it to the browser response. So I want to use another annotation over here called response buddy. Using this annotation, I will be able to write this annotation directly to the browser, browser response. The response that I'll be writing this string to that response. So when the client is going to hit me this endpoint, he is going to get this string back. So that's it. So that's the 3 annotations that I have added. But as I said, all these annotations are not going to work because I don't have Spring in my application. So what to do? So I have to go to the pom.xml and I have to add some dependency. You can see in my Maven dependency right now, there is one jar present called JUnit jar because that's the only jar that Maven has updated for me whenever I created this project. Now I have to add at least a couple more jar over here. So what is the first jar that I'll be adding? So I'll be going to web and I'll be going to the Maven repository and I'll be clicking on the first link. The first jar that I'll be adding over here is going to be the Spring Core jar. Spring Core is the jar that I need to have the basic Spring feature. And I want to Springify my application. So I'll click on Spring Core, click on the 6.0.9 version, and I'll be clicking on this jar. It will be copied to my clipboard. I'll be going back to my STS and I'll be pasting this dependency over here. Okay, so the Spring Core jar that I have added because I want to use the basic Spring feature over here. The next jar that I want to add here, I want to bring in the Spring context or the Spring IOC container. So I want to use another jar over here. So I'll be going back to Google Chrome and I'll be looking for something called Spring context because I want to use the Spring container and I want to bring in this jar. So if I click on this, I'll go ahead and choose the same version. Make sure you choose that as a developer, the same version, otherwise you'll have a version conflict. So I'll be copying this one. I'll be going back again to my STS tool, and I'll be pasting the Spring context jar here. Perfect. But one thing I believe that the Spring context jar that we have added, if I go inside this jar, and if I'll scroll down a little bit, you can see the Spring context is already having the Spring core dependency here, right here, you can see. And this is the same dependency that I have added here in my pom.xml explicitly right here. So what I believe that if I have the Spring context dependency, I really don't have to keep this particular dependency again. Because whenever I have this, and if I'll do Control S here, the Spring context is going to bring in the Spring core transitively, and that is what a transitive dependency means. Even though I don't have the Spring core jar here, whenever I keep this dependency, the Spring context internally bring in the Spring Bean, Spring context, Spring AOP, all this jar explicitly. So that's good. It is having all this jar inside it. So whenever I'm keeping that dependency, all these dependencies are bringing in transitively. That's good. Okay, I'm happy with that. So I have the Spring core and the Spring basic feature support with the application context and the container. So that's good. The next thing is that I want to create a web application for my client. And if I want to create a web application, and if it is a RESTful application, then I want to keep the Spring Web MVC dependency. So I will be going to the Maven Central again, and here I'll be looking for the Spring Web MVC. And I'll be searching for that. I'll be choosing the right version, the same version that I have chosen earlier for Spring context, which is 6.0.9. I'll go inside it, I'll copy that, and I'll go back and I'll paste it over here. Okay, so it looks like all these things are done. I have the MVC support for my application so that I can use all this annotation that I have over here. So let's see that if I can do it. I'll Control S it. I'll bring in the Spring MVC related dependency. Right over here, the jars are there in my build path. So I'll go back to my controller, and right now if I'll do a Control Shift O, all this imports that I'm getting from org.spring framework, and I have imported all these annotations. That means I have Springified my application. Now I'm using the Spring feature to create an endpoint over here that I can give to my client and can tell my client that, hey, hit/hello world, and you're gonna be getting this response back written to your browser, because I have added this annotation and I have annotated my class with a special annotation called addController. So the controller is a special annotation which is going to help me to create web application in Spring. Okay, so much other things are also involved. Let's not talk about it. So that's good. So we have created this endpoint right now. So I can give this endpoint to my client and he can basically run this application. Let's see if it is happening. I'll do a Control S right now. Let's test if our hello world endpoint is working or not right now. So let's just go for that. But hold on. If I want to test this endpoint, I need to deploy this application into a server, because this is a web application. So I have to deploy this application inside a server if I want this application to work, if I want this endpoint to work. So to deploy this application, I'll be needing a web server, maybe Jetty, maybe Tomcat, maybe JBoss, maybe Glassfish. So let me bring in a server right here, right now. So I have already downloaded a Tomcat server. So if you don't have the Tomcat server right now, you can go to Tomcat and download the latest Tomcat server here. So you can click on Tomcat 11 and you can just download the Tomcat 11 right now. But I have Tomcat 10.1 in my machine right now. Let me use that. So I'll be going back to here and I'll be adding a Tomcat server to test my application and to test this endpoint. So I'll go here and I'll click on Windows and I'll click on where? So View. And I'll click on server. So I'll click on other and I'll just go for server. And right here, right now, once I get the server option, I'll add a server. I'll click on this. I'll go for Apache and I'll go for Tomcat and I'll go for the Tomcat 10.1 version. I'll click on next here and I'll be adding the source file of my Tomcat. So this is the Tomcat 10.0.1, I believe. So I already have this in place. If you don't have it, go to any folder over here and just search for Tomcat like this. Okay, do a enter. Once you get the Tomcat, choose the right version, 10.1 for me, and click on open and click on finish, right? And that is going to add the Tomcat server for you. Let me just see if this server is working or it is corrupted. Let me just click on the start button and let's just see like if my Tomcat is starting. And looks like the Tomcat is starting fine. Okay, so I can see that the Tomcat startup, this info is there. So my Tomcat has successfully started. Let me stop it right now because I just wanted to see that my Tomcat was working or not. Okay, so now the Tomcat is stopped and you can see it over here. Now let's just go ahead and deploy this application inside the Tomcat server and let's just see if it is working or not. Let's just go for it.
You gotta focus on yourself, on your faith, on your dreams, on your mind, on your health, yeah. Gotta work, never tell, keep your head down.
So always remember this. If you're using the latest Spring Framework version, which is 6.0 or anything greater than this, then you have to use at least Java 17 plus. Okay, Spring Framework 6 with the Java 17 or plus version you use, and use the Tomcat 10 plus version. So the 10.0 or the 10.1 of the Tomcat will work fine with this combination. So Spring Framework 6, Java 17 plus, and Tomcat 10 plus should be something that you'll be using if you're using Spring Framework 6. If you're using Spring 5, then you can use the Tomcat 9. Spring 5 will not work with the Tomcat 10. Do remember. So Spring 6 with Tomcat 10 or plus, Spring 5, then the Tomcat 9 or lesser. Okay. I hope this is making sense before you start creating this project and start to do some experiment. Understand this. Let's go next. All right. So now to test this application, I'll just do a right click on this application. I'll click on run on server. I'll choose this Tomcat. I'll click on next and I'll click on finish to this because I want to deploy this application inside my Tomcat server. So I'll do finish here. So let it deploy this application. And once my application is deployed, now it's deployed and a default prompt has been appear here on my screen. Now I want to choose the endpoint that I want to hit. So I'll be choosing this endpoint. I'll click on Control C. I'll go back here and I'll just do a Control V here. Okay. And I'll be tasting this hello world endpoint right now that I have developed in my Spring application. And my expectation here is right now, I will be getting this string back to my server because I have written response buddy here, and that is going to help me to write this particular string in my in my screen right now. Do enter. Let's just do enter. Enter. Not available. 404. I'm not getting the text here on my screen. So what's the issue? It's not going to be that easy, because if it is that easy, I should not be explaining this particular thing right now to you. And I should not be making you realize that how painful it is even to write a hello world application. You need to be really, really strong. You have to, your background, your foundation need to be strong, even to create a simple Spring hello world application. Let's just see like how much more we have to understand. So let's just go back. So this is not working. My hello world endpoint is still not working. So what to do next? Okay. So the next thing here is that we have to develop a couple more things. And one more thing is that, your client has said that your endpoint should look like this, /myapp.com. Then you have to put /hello world. Even this endpoint is also not working. Our goal is to develop this endpoint. And none of these endpoints are working, or none of this URL that we have developed are working. So the next step here is to create a dispatcher servlet and a configuration file. So if you are new to dispatcher servlet, and if you're hearing this term for the first time, I have a 10-minute slide which is coming next to you, which is going to make you prominent what is the use of dispatcher servlet and what is the use of a front controller, because I'm going to write those code right now over here manually. And before you jump to Spring Boot, it is really important to understand how a dispatcher servlet works. So that slide is coming up right now, but if you are my old viewer and if you are an experienced developer who have written thousands of Spring application, not thousands by the way, if you have written thousands of application, then please don't watch my videos. It's going to be too obvious for you. Yeah. If you have written some applications in Spring, then you should be good with Spring. So just skip the next 15 minutes if you are already aware of dispatcher servlet. But if you're new, just watch the next 15 minutes and then I'll be writing that couple of files right over here. Let's say we have a controller here called Hello World controller, which has an endpoint configured called /hello, which does certain work. You can see a bunch of code which is attached with this URL called /hello. And like that, we have another controller which is called hi controller. And the hi controller is also have a URL configured called /hi, and it has some bunch of code which basically serves the request called /hi. Now imagine you are sitting with a laptop and hitting an URL called /hello. Now this request will go to the Hello World controller. That's because the Hello World controller knows how to handle this /hello request because the user is hitting this one. Let's say somebody is hitting another URL called /hi. Now the /hi endpoint should be redirected to the hi controller, and the hi controller knows how to handle this request called /hi because it has a URL configured with /hi, and the /hi has a block of code. It knows how to handle this request and what to respond back to the user. So this is how the flow should be. But is it happening that smoothly? Let's find out. So basically, the flow that you have seen doesn't happen like that in real time. The way it works with the help of a front controller. So let's invite our main and the important guy and the hero of our movie called the front controller. The front controller is the guy you can think like is the manager, is the headmaster, is the principal. It is the head of the body. This is the guy who is responsible how the request will be managed and where it need to be redirected. For an example, if somebody is hitting /hello, then the front controller will first accept that request. That request will not be directly going to any of these controllers that we have over here. Rather, the request first reaches to the front controller. And the front controller, being the head of the body, decide whom to send this request and who can handle this request. Now the front controller knows that the /hello request can be handled by the Hello World controller because it has an endpoint called /hello. So the front controller dispatches this request to the Hello World controller, and the Hello World controller rather process this endpoint and give a response back to the user. Like that, if the user is hitting endpoint called /hi, then the request will be accepted by the front controller. And now the front controller knows who can handle this request out of the two controllers that we have, Hello World controller or the hi controller. Right now the front controller knows that the hi controller does have an endpoint called /hi, and this is the controller which can handle this request called /hi, which is coming from the user. Now the front controller dispatches the request to the hi controller, and this hi controller does have this endpoint which basically has a block of code which basically handles the request. So that's the job of the front controller. The front controller is a special type of controller which stays in front of all your controllers. So as I said, this is the front controller. It stays in front. Like all your controllers, this is also a controller, but it stays in front and it just decides whom to dispatch the request, who can handle the request when there is an incoming request coming. And it doesn't do any specific task, but it just dispatches the request. And these controllers are basically doing some action. And these controllers are basically the action controllers, which basically does some work with the help of the code that we have configured. But the front controller doesn't do anything, it just dispatches the request to the right controller, which can handle that specific request which is coming from the user. So far, I have introduced the hero of the movie, and that's the front controller. Now just remember, the front controller does have a nickname, and the nickname is called Dispatcher Servlet. So whenever we are learning Spring or whenever we're working with Spring, if somebody tell you about Dispatcher Servlet, you treat it like the front controller. But we know that our hero is a superhero. It has some special power. And what is the power of the front controller? It knows like what controller handles what request. Let's understand how our superhero front controller got this superpower of knowing about all the different controllers available in our application and what kind of requests they handles. So let's say if our dispatcher servlet or the front controller is having an incoming request called /hello, then how the front controller can resolve this request and whom to dispatch this request, how the front controller will know about it. So just to remember, the front controller does have access to a beautiful thing, and that is an application context or an IOC container. So as you know, IOC container is the place where basically Springs gather all the different kinds of objects that you have in your application. Let me tell you what I mean. So the front controller does have access to the IOC container, but how this IOC container gets created? The IOC container gets created by the dispatcher servlet or the front controller. The front controller takes help from a special file called a configuration file. Okay, so out of this configuration file, the front controller creates this context or the IOC container or an application context. The way it does is the configuration file basically scans for all the controller that you have in your application. If you have a couple of controllers in your application called hello controller and hi controller, all these controllers are annotated with a special Spring annotation called @controller. And that is why I'm basically telling that all these classes are controllers because they are annotated with a special annotation called @controller. Now the configuration file will have a special command that scan for all the controllers and create the object for all these controllers and keep them inside the IOC container. So the configuration file will scan for it if this class does have an annotation called @controller, and if it does, it will create a bean for it. And bean is a special name for object in Spring Framework. So the configuration file will go ahead and create an object called hello controller. Like that, the configuration file will also scan for the hi controller. The hi controller class is also annotated with a @controller annotation, so it detects that and also creates an object or a bean for that. And all these beans will be lying inside the IOC container. And now when somebody hits an endpoint called /hello, this URL request will be accepted by the front controller. And now the front controller takes help of the IOC container or the application context that it has been attached to, and it knows like what are the bean or controller it has inside the application context and what controller can handle what request. And right now the front controller knows hello controller is the controller which basically can handle the /hello request. So whenever it has this request incoming, it will dispatch that request to the hello controller. So the front controller stays in front of the hello controller. That's why it's called a front controller. And this front controller is basically helping me to dispatch this request to a specific controller called a hello controller. And that's why it is also calling a dispatcher servlet. It is a special servlet which is dispatching the incoming request to a specific servlet. Let me tell you, all your controllers that you have in Spring Framework by default are called servlets only. So in Spring language, we are calling them controller, but if we are going to the J2EE language, all your controllers are called servlets. So this is a servlet, this is a servlet, and your front controller is also a servlet. So this is also a servlet, but as it is dispatching your request to a specific servlet, it is called a dispatcher servlet. I'll tell you a fun fact. You know what? You can have as many front controller that you want in an application. Let me show you an example. Let's say we have a front controller or a dispatcher servlet. This is my first front controller which is available in my application. And this front controller will have a configuration file. And it uses this configuration file to scan all the controllers which are available. And as I said, it will be creating a web application context or a container out of this configuration file. So it basically creates a container and creates all the objects, which basically it scans through the configuration file. So just remember, the web application context is the name of the container. So as we are working with a web application, as we will be accepting request and serving response, in that case, the container has a special name. Instead of application context, we call them web application context. And all these objects has been created out of the configuration file that the dispatcher servlet has. So the dispatcher servlet uses this configuration file and creates this container, which is called a web application context. Now you have to understand a very special thing. Every front controller will be attached with a URL pattern. For an example, the front controller 1 has a URL pattern called abc.com/star. That does mean that this front controller will only work for this URL endpoint called /abc.com, and after that there can be anything. That's why I've written /star. So if any request coming to my application which is starting from abc.com, then this is the front controller which will handle that request. For an example, if a URL which will be accepted by the front controller is called /abc.com/hello. So the way it resolves this particular endpoint called /hello is basically by scanning through all the controller it has. So let's say inside this container, it knows the X controller handles the /hello request, the Y controller handles the /hi request, the Z controller handles the /by request. Now the front controller 1 or the dispatcher servlet 1 knows whom to send this request called /hello. So it's basically going to dispatch the /hello request to the X controller because it knows it is going to handle the /hello request. So like the front controller 1, you can also create multiple dispatcher servlet in your application. And let's say this particular front controller is also being configured with a URL pattern called /xyz.com. That means the front controller 2 handles all the incoming requests starting from xyz.com, and there can be anything after that, like xyz.com/home, xyz.com/menu, xyz.com/blah blah blah. Right? Let's say it is having a request called /xyz.com/gm, and in this case, the A controller will handle the GM request. So right now in our application, we have to do two things. We have to create a front controller or a dispatcher servlet, and we will be creating a configuration file. Out of this, the dispatcher servlet will be creating this application context. Hopefully this is making sense. Let's go for that and let's do that. All right, now I think you understood what is the use of the dispatcher servlet, and you know that we have to create a configuration file right now. So let me just create a configuration class here, and I'll say hello world app config. And the next thing that I'll be doing here, I'll be just writing a config file, and I'll just hit finish. And this particular class is going to be my configuration class. So I'll be just writing an annotation called configuration coming from org.springframework.context.annotation. And I want to set up a configuration over here. I want to give a command to component scan. I want to scan all the component and the controllers which are available in my application. And I want to use this component scan annotation. And I'm keeping all my controllers inside this package. And this is the package. So I'll just copy this particular package name and I'll put it over here. So now all the controllers or components which are available inside this package, that will be scanned. So I'm doing a component scan. And as you know, like the hello world controller is having an annotation called add controller. And if I'll keep keep my cursor over here, my controller is already having a add component annotation. So inside the controller, I have the add component annotation over here. Okay, so basically my controller annotation specific classes like hello world controller also will be available for component scanning. And that's why I'm instructing inside my config class that, hey, go ahead and do a component scan inside this package. And if you find any classes detected with a add controller annotation, please create the bin for that and put it inside the application context or inside the web application context. So my dispatcher servlet will be using that particular web application context to figure out where to dispatch a incoming request to which controller. So right now I have done the same, and here I have used some of the annotations to configure my config file. So I'll just go ahead, and the next step here is that I'll be creating a dispatcher servlet and giving this configuration file to the dispatcher servlet to use. So I'll go ahead and create a new class here. And this class is going to be my dispatcher class. This class is going to help me to set up a dispatcher servlet, which is going to be the entry point to my application. So I'll just write here, hello world application initializer, and I'll click on finish. And in this class, I'll be creating a dispatcher servlet. But I will not be writing the dispatcher servlet by myself. I'll be telling Spring to create this dispatcher servlet for me. And for that, I'll be extending to a class called abstract annotation config dispatcher servlet initializer. I want to use a annotation config dispatcher servlet initializer class because I'm using my configuration file where I have annotations, and this particular class that I can use, and internally this class is going to help me to create dispatcher servlet, and it is going to configure a dispatcher servlet based on the commands that I'm giving right over here. So if you want to know more how this class works internally, you can watch my videos on dispatcher servlet. You can watch and check out all these videos that you are seeing on your screen right now to know more about how this class works internally. But for now, you just understand I'm writing this to create a dispatcher servlet. And let me just go ahead and create a dispatcher servlet right now using this class. So you can see I'm just getting an error over here because I have to implement some of the methods that is basically present inside this abstract class that I have. And here are the three things that I want to configure. The first thing here is that, as I said, I'm creating a dispatcher servlet, and this class is going to help me to set up a dispatcher servlet. So to create a dispatcher servlet, I will be needing a application config file, and using that file, the dispatcher servlet will create a container or the web application context where all your controller beans will be staying. So what I'll be doing, I'll be going to the get servlet config classes, and all my servlets are getting configured here inside this configuration file called hello world app config. So I'll copy this class name. I'll go over here and I'll just say, okay, this is the configuration class that I have, and read this class and find out all the configuration that I have mentioned regarding different servlets or different controllers that I have in my application. But this is just giving me an error, and it is saying that the return type is not matching because the return type is an array, because I can have many configuration files like this class, and out of many configuration file, I can create a web application context or a container. But right now I have only one. So I'll just go to my application initializer and I'll say, okay, you want me to return an array? I'm doing it. So I'm going to be saying new, and I will be just, giving an array sign. But I'll be saying I have only one class right here. Use that to create my dispatcher servlet. Okay. And use this class as the configuration to read what controller to scan and what objects to put inside that particular container. Okay, if you have many more configuration file, you can give a comma over here and keep defining your configuration classes right over here. Okay. Perfect. The next thing here is that the servlet mapping. As I said, the dispatcher servlet that I'll be creating, it will be having a responsibility to accept the incoming request to your application. But I told you, every dispatcher servlet is going to be mapped with an URL mapping, like what requests they are going to be handling, for what they are responsible for. And I said that I'll be creating an endpoint called /myapp.com/star. And by writing this, I'm saying any request which is coming to my application starting with myapp.com, and there can be anything after that. It can be hello, hi, bye, menu, home, contacts, or anything after myapp.com. If any URL is starting with myapp.com and there is anything after that, you please handle this request. So I'm instructing the dispatcher servlet that I'm creating. So here I'm creating a dispatcher servlet, okay? And I'm instructing that this is the responsibility of yours to handle this kind of URL patterns. And obviously this is again an string array it is expecting, because I can tell my dispatcher servlet that, okay, you handle this endpoint, you handle another endpoint called abc.com/star, but I have only one pattern right over here. But you can mention different types of pattern, so you can return an array of string. But I have only one pattern here, so I'm specifying here with the array of strings. So I can just return a new string array and I can specify the pattern that I want. But you can just put a comma and can start specifying your pattern that you want this dispatcher servlet to handle. Okay, so this is good. So right now my dispatcher has been set up and I think things are good. And why I'm getting an error over here, Control-Shift-O to remove any unnecessary imports if I have, but I don't have any. But why I'm getting this? It is saying that the type Jakarta servlet exception cannot be resolved. Okay, I'll tell you why I'm getting this. I'm creating this dispatcher servlet, right? So basically, I also need to add the servlet API. So what I'll be doing right now, I'll go to the pom.xml and I'll be also adding the servlet dependency here. So I'll just go over here to my Maven repository, and right here I'll be looking for the Jakarta servlet API, and this is the latest Jakarta servlet API. I'll be getting the 6.0.0 version. I'll copy that. I'll go back to here and I'll paste this dependency right here. I'll just click on this and I'll just do a Control-S to get that dependency. And right now, let me just see the Maven dependency. I think I got the Jakarta dependency over here, and I can see there is no error right now. And for my dispatcher servlet also, for my configuration file, there is no error. And in my dispatcher servlet also, there is no error. Let me just do a Control-S to this. So everything is good right now. Let's just test our application one more time. So I'll just go over here and I'll go to my console. I'll stop my application and I'll restart it. I'll just click on right click, run as, run on server, and let's just start our application by deploying it inside a Tomcat server. And let's just do a Control-S. All right. Let's just see if my dispatcher is picked up by my Tomcat server. And looks like it is picking up. You have to make sure that your dispatcher servlet have been picked up, and you can see this line is confirming that info initializing the servlet dispatcher. That means whenever I have deployed my application, this particular file that I have over here is picked up by my Tomcat, and the Tomcat has picked up this file and created the dispatcher servlet, and the dispatcher servlet has created the web application context out of this configuration file. And this particular config file basically scanned all the things that I have inside this particular package and created the object for the same. For an example, this controller object has been created, and this particular controller object is right now staying inside the web application context, right? And this controller can handle this request. Right now, if I'll be firing this endpoint, Control-C, and I'll be going to here, and I'll be firing this hello world endpoint here. And if I'll do enter, I'm not getting anything because the pattern, look at the pattern. The URL is not starting from myapp.com, right? /myapp.com. I told that my dispatcher servlet can only handle the request if the incoming URLs will start from myapp.com, and then there can be anything after it. So let me copy the myapp.com. Let me go again over here, and I'll be just doing a Control V here, and I'll just hit the endpoint again. And I'm saying I still have some issue over here. Let me correct the URL and let me just do an enter, and boom, I got finally hello world, welcome to my Spring app. Oops, so much coding we have done just for a hello app application. How crazy is that? Do you want to write this much of code? My business code was just to write this much of code. And for this, I have done so many things. I want to do a little bit of modification over here. Basically, if you want to write a REST controller here, that will be better, because I want to build a REST endpoint. So I'll be writing a REST controller here. And if I hover on this endpoint, you can see the REST controller internally is having the controller annotation and the response body annotation. So the response body annotation that I have added here, or I can also add it over here, that I can simply remove right now, because the REST controller is already embedded with this couple of annotation, controller and response body. So I have removed it. I think my application will still work fine. Let me wait till my application reload my latest changes. And again, it is going to deploy the same application, and looks like the reloading is completed. Now, again, if you go over here and do an enter, things are still working fine. But still, only to write this much of code, I have to do all this thing. I have to create a project, I have to add dependency, I have to add a server, I have to write a dispatcher servlet, I have to write some configuration file over here, so many things. And now here comes the Spring Boot for rescue. So let's just go ahead and let's see how Spring is going to come and protect us to write and this much of code, and how it is going to protect us from all these things. Let's just go ahead and let's find out. Alright, so welcome to Spring Boot, and I will show you how to write a hello world application in 1 minute. Okay, so right now I have to go to Spring Boot website. So I'll just go to spring.io, and I will just go to the initializer website. So I'll click on this, and I'll click on Spring Initializer. I just forgot the URL. Is start.spring.io. Go to this URL. You'll be getting this screen. That's good. Now I want to create a Maven project, and I want to create a project using the Spring latest version. I'll choose the Spring Boot version here as 3.1.0. I want to create a project called my hello world app, and the group ID is going to be com.seleniumexpress.hello world app, a hello world app, the description, and there you go. And the package name com.seleniumexpress.hello world app. This is what I need. That's it. And I want to create a jar type application. If you want to build this application, I want to get a jar, jar build type. I want to use the Java version as 19. I don't have any 19 here. Let me go with 17. And I want to develop a Spring application which can help me to create REST application. So I will just write Spring Web dependency, and as it is saying build web including the RESTful applications using the Spring MVC. Uses Apache Tomcat as a default embedded container. So I feel if I want to use this dependency, I can create a RESTful application, and also I don't have to use Tomcat separately. Let me click on this, and I'll click on generate. Now this is it. It is going to help me to create a project. So I will save this project inside the downloads folder. And there you go. My project has been downloaded. So I, as a developer, doesn't have to create the project by myself. And I don't have to do all those scary things that I have done when I created the project for the first time in Eclipse, right? Now I have created the project. Let's just see how it is. So this is my hello world application.zip. Let me unzip it. So my Hello World application has been extracted. Let me import this particular project. This is a Maven project. So what I'll do, I'll go to one of my IDE. Right now I'm going to use IntelliJ, and I'll click on open, and I'll open this particular project. So I'll go to the downloads. I'll go to my Hello World app. It has a pom.xml file. Click on open, and I want to open this as a project. And my project has been opened. I'll go to the source folder. I'll go to the main Java, and I have a com.seleniumexpress.hello world. I have all these folders. All right, so the next thing here is that I want to write a controller, a hello world controller, which will have an endpoint called /hello world. You know how to write a controller. So what I will do, I'll copy paste my controller that I have written from my Eclipse. So I'll go back to my Eclipse, and this is the controller that I have here, and I'll copy this, and I will close my Eclipse right now, and I will go back to my Spring Boot project, and I'll paste it right over here called the Hello World controller. I'll click on OK. So this is the exact same code that I have over here, isn't it? So right now I think like I'm done. I don't have to do anything else, right? So I think I have an endpoint which is basically going to handle any incoming request called /hello world, and it is going to return back this to the browser of the client. So right now, let me start this application. And to start this application, I'll go to a file that the Spring Boot has created for me, and I'll go over here. I really don't know what is happening right over here for a moment. So I will not try to understand this, but I will just click on this, and I'll try to run this particular main method that has already been written by Spring Boot, and this came free whenever I basically got this project and I imported this particular project. And mind you that I have downloaded this particular project from the Spring Initializer website. And the moment I ran this application, it says that my application has been started, and there is an interesting line over here called Tomcat started on port number 8080. And I have not added any Tomcat right now to my IntelliJ, but it is saying that I have an embedded Tomcat which is started on port number 8080, and my application has already been deployed to that particular Tomcat. So let's just try to test my application. If my application has been deployed to Tomcat server, then I can basically test this endpoint which is running in Tomcat 8080. So let's just do one thing. Let's just go to my web browser. So I'll go to my web browser, and I will be writing the URL localhost 8080, and I will just write hello world. So I just want to remind you that we have written this endpoint called /hello world, and I want to do an enter, and boom. See, we have not written anything. We have not configured a project by ourselves. We have not added any dependency by ourselves. We have not added any server by ourselves. We have not fixed any project related issues just the way we have done before with Eclipse. We have not spent any time with setting up our project, adding the dependency, adding a server, fixing any project related issue, writing any dispatcher Servlet, doing any type of configuration. We have not done anything. And in a moment, our application has been configured, and I just spent some time writing this hello world controller. I just copy and pasted it from my Eclipse, but if you would have written this much of code, it might take you at most 1 minute, right? So this is some simple code that I have written, and Spring Boot has got me started with the project in minutes. And that is the reason 100% of developer choose Spring Boot over Spring MVC, and this is the reason why we as a developer need to choose Spring Boot to develop any Spring application. It is going to quick, it is going to be fast, and you only need to understand Spring a little bit and you can just get started with your application. But hold on, do we need to understand all those things that I have told? Yes, of course we need to understand, because here also in the Spring Boot application, all those things that we have done in our STS with the raw Spring Boot application, all those things has been done by Spring Boot. right here. And if you want to do any modification or any customization, we need to understand how those things has been configured by Spring Boot. So with this Hello World application, a dispatcher servlet has been configured. With this Hello World application that has been created by Spring Boot, a embedded Tomcat server has been configured. This is a Maven project. So if I go to the pom.xml file, this is a pom.xml file which has been written by Spring Boot only. So if I need to do any changes over here, I also need to understand Maven. So if you see here, all this dependency has been pulled in by Spring Boot. So dependency has also been managed by Spring Boot. So there is some dependency that Spring Boot has added for me. So a lot of things Spring Boot has taken care, and it got me started in minutes. But as a developer, in order to understand Spring Boot, I have to understand Spring as well. And right now, even if you are new to Spring Boot, but if you know Spring, you understand all those things that we have discussed and done in Eclipse have already been done here as well by the Spring Boot framework. And we'll be exploring all the features of the Spring Boot and how all these things has been done by Spring Boot and how all the magics has happened and how we got this application started in minute and how we are getting this endpoint working. We'll be talking about that in the next video. One last thing I want to do, because I remember that I have said you guys that this endpoint should be starting with myapp.com/hello world. So what I want to do here is that I want to write /myapp.com/hello world, right? And this endpoint will not work right now. So I want to say this one as my context path, but I don't have any dispatcher servlet set up with my application right now that I have in Spring Boot. So I'll go to my application.properties file and I'll add something called server.servlet.context path, and I'll be writing something called myapp.com/. Okay. So can I do /myapp.com? This will work fine for me. If I'll do Control S and if I'll restart my Spring Boot application, then let's see if my application URL is right now working. So if I'll do Control S, I'll go back over here, do an enter, and there you go. It's working, and the URL that I wanted to create over here is working as well. And that's the beauty of Spring Boot. You configured everything in minutes. All right. Okay, so that's it for the video. Thank you very much for watching this, and I hope this is beneficial. If yes, then let me know in the comment. So if you guys want, you can follow me on Insta and can raise questions. And this is my Insta ID, Selenium_Express. You can also follow me on Facebook and can like my Facebook page and can join my Facebook group to ask questions. And also, if you want, you can subscribe to my channel if you like my videos and if you want to stay tuned to the upcoming videos as well. So do subscribe if you really feel my videos are putting some value for your career. And that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Till then, happy coding.
You gotta focus on yourself, on your faith, on your dreams, on your mind, on your health, yeah. You gotta work, never tell, keep your head down, find what you love and excel, yeah. Push and pull and repel any hate, go create what you want, feel compelled, yeah. And once you finally get a taste of the race, you'll never look back once you felt that. Don't let somebody take your time and your worth, just focus on yourself.